Hi everyone, I just put the finishing touches on this new hairpiece. The hairpiece is designed with a French Barrette attached to the back and an imaginary landscape with a sunset painted on its surface. In this video, I'm going to guide you step by step in the process of creating the watercolor painting for the surface of the hairpiece. Let's take a closer look at the hairpiece. To create the small watercolor painting that forms the top of the hairpiece, I began by washing in my primary colors horizontally to create the effect of the sky. After that was done, I allowed it to dry. I didn't blend the colors with the brush. I let it happen on its own, and after it was dry, I worked in the sun. I allowed that to dry and then overlapped a series of hilltops that we see down here. The final step was to introduce a very light wash of Antwerp Blue along the perimeter of the piece and allow it to bleed in ever so slightly to create that shade effect as we go towards the edge. To paint the watercolor painting that forms the top of the hairpiece, and here's one that I'm working on right now, I didn't need much in the way of supplies. You do need a piece of watercolor paper, and I use 140-pound paper, the same paper that forms the actual hairpiece itself. This is all built from 140-pound paper. Watercolor paint, and for this particular one and this, I only used a few colors. Windsor red, alizarin crimson, Windsor yellow, cobalt blue, quinacridone gold, and that's what I added to the bottom over here, and the final blue that I added to the border, Antwerp Blue. That's it. A number 6 round watercolor brush and a small palette. Also, you'll watch me use the incredible nib. Now that we've talked about the tools we'll be using, let's begin to paint. First, let's dampen our paper. I'm using a number 6 round watercolor painting brush. This time, let's start with a blue sky. A little bit of clean water, squirt it into my cobalt blue. Wash it in. Notice I drag my paint horizontally back and forth because it's a landscape and I want to capture the horizontal motion of the clouds. Next, I want to create a sunset effect, so I'm going to get a little quinacridone red. Apply that down here. Wow, dramatic. But that's okay. Why not? Now into that dramatic sky, let's get some yellowish filaments. I'm going to lift out just a little bit of that dramatic red. I dampen my brush and then drag it back in with just some clean water. Yeah, I'm lifting out the paint as I do that. The secret with this, if you want it to look good, is not to intentionally blend the colors with your brush. Let them blend on their own. A little bit more of that yellow down here. And now I'm going to just wash into it. Alright, I'm going to let it dry. Now that this is thoroughly dry, I'll indicate where I want the sun to be, and I think I would like it to be over here. So I'm going to lightly indicate the shape of the setting sun.
Similar to what I did here, only this is much larger. But I'm pushing the sun to the side of the piece to create a sense of asymmetric balance. Now, indicating that I want the sun there, I'm going to lighten the color a little bit. Lifting out paint with just clean water. Blot it up with my Kleenex. Now I want that kind of brilliant orange, yellowish sun at sunset. Wetting a bit of Windsor red, I'll apply it to the top area. Often, the sun will pick up striations of clouds that appear in front of it. You'll see it. It makes it spectacular. Now I'll work in a little yellow. Touch of alizarin crimson. That's it. I'll let it dry. While this is drying, I notice that I have enough paper left to make another hair clip. So why not? I'll cut it out and assemble another little hair clip. Now, so I could continue with the imaginary mountain range on the lower part. And also I mentioned I was going to glue up paper to make another hairpiece. And I just wanted to point something out here. As you learned, if you've watched my video on how to make a beautiful hair clip, after I glue the paper layers together, I firmly hold the glued paper against an existing French Barrette to give it its curve, its shape. The curve of the hairpiece needs to be identical to the French Barrette for it to glue properly. And I pointed out that the hair clips, it happened in this piece, although you can't see it now, make marks in the relatively soft watercolor paper that you may not like. Not that they matter because you're able to cover them up. But if you want to eliminate that from happening, what I did here was place an intervening layer of paper between the paper clips and the hairpiece. This should effectively prevent marks. Let's add a mountain range. I'm going to start with a nice cobalt blue wash. I introduce an irregular line and I quickly pull the color down. I don't want a solid line to form. I want to have a nice light wash of color. I need a little more paint. Notice too, I don't worry about extending beyond the shape of the hairpiece. Good. We'll allow that to dry. It's dry, and we're ready to add another wash of blue. Before we throw in the wash, I just want to mention one thing. Originally, I showed you with this big hair clip attached to the back. I didn't really want to have that attached to the back, but it's the only thing I could find at the moment. I recommend you use the hair clip that you intend to glue to your hairpiece to establish the curve. This way, the curve of the hairpiece will be identical to the French Barrette that's glued to the back. Okay. Gonna wash in another layer of blue. As the hills approach the foreground, the effect of atmospheric perspective is diminished, and you begin to see more detail. More colors. In this case, give it a little hint of green. The green is a beautiful complement to the reds that we have in here. having a little fun with the color. I think I'll pick up a little of the red. Ooh, that's a little too much red. What do you do in a case like that? No big deal. Clean off your brush. Suck up the color. Notice how the red mixes with the green to create a brown. Now I'm going to throw a little bit more of the green in there. And not worry about it. I have a nice little variation. An echo of the setting sun and the hilltop. I'm working in a little quinacridone gold in the lower area, and I'm going to let it bleed up naturally. Let's see what kind of an effect that creates. As it begins to dry, and I get to the right moisture level, I'm going to sprinkle a little salt into this area to give it some more texture and suggest a close-up hilltop. Let's leave it alone now. Come back when it's dry. See the dramatic textural effect that the salt gave to the watercolor paint. And that effectively pulls this range of hills into the foreground.
Next, I'll paint a subtle Antwerp Blue wash around the perimeter of the hairpiece. This border will nicely frame the piece.
How will I do that? First, I'm going to sprinkle some water onto. I just want to dampen it. I don't want to brush it too much. Don't want to move the paint around. Now for this, I think I'll go into Antwerp Blue. And I'm not painting into the piece. I'm flowing it along the edge. Okay, let's let it dry and see what happens. The incredible nib might help. You've seen me work with this in my watercolor painting demonstrations. And I just lift out a little bit of paint. Good. I'm creating a cloud effect. Maybe I'll carry it over into the imaginary hilltop.
The hairpiece painting demonstration is finished. See my video entitled How to Construct a Beautiful Hairpiece for complete instructions on how to make a hairpiece that incorporates a French barrette.
I always like to sign my one-of-a-kind pieces. Multiple layers of varnish have been applied and it's been baked. That's it. I hope you enjoyed watching the video.